Thanks for Delaney. This is 11 honors, and we're going to review a little bit what happened in chapter 1. So would you take a look at that? Some of these questions we can answer. I don't know how far it is. Maybe not many. Maybe just basically the first one. No, there are a couple. So the first one says, what impressions of Huck's character you get from the following comments? 1A, Huck says when the widow reads him about Moses, because he don't take no stock in dead people. So he's fine with Moses. He loves learning about Moses until he finds out that Moses is dead. What does that say about him? Isabella, what does that say about him? Because it's something that happened a long time ago. He doesn't think it matters. You know anybody like that? I don't either. That would be really foolish. But why is it foolish? Well, about the Bible, everything in the Bible is old, right? If you said that about the entire Bible, everybody that was in the Bible is dead. So you would have to dismiss. Why would you think, why do we not do that? Why do we not dismiss the entire Bible? Because, and you said you didn't know anybody like this. I don't either. Why would that be foolish? To dismiss anything that was, everything we read, every single book we read, people are dead who wrote it, including Huck Finn. Why would that be foolish? And you ladies can help, Sarah. Or why would it be foolish to dismiss the past?
Because the past is what, like, I guess the past is what influenced the present. So, I guess, like, you have to know the past to understand what's going on in the present day, I guess.
That's a good answer. I mean, if you've never done something, don't you like to be with somebody who's done it before? Like maybe you went somewhere, I don't know where, I don't know what it is, but doesn't that help you to know that somebody has already done it and you can learn from them? So first it tells us one, I think the way to put this, he's uneducated. He doesn't understand the Bible. But he's also practical. That sounds like a compliment. Here it's absurd, but it's a compliment to say someone's practical. I mean, don't you like practical people? What would a practical person look like? Or how would a practical person act? Sarah, what does it mean to be practical? Are you practical? Do you know anybody who's practical?
Is it to like think ahead of things? Or like,
say it again.
is it to like think ahead of things? Like before, I don't know how to describe it. Like I kind of know what it is, but I don't know how to describe it.
Well, why don't we define practical is being concerned, you like it if it works. If it gets the job done. That's a practical person. I'll believe you and if it works. If it doesn't work, I'm going to dismiss it. That's being very practical. Is it useful? Then I'm all in. If it's not useful, forget it. And so we kind of admire that. I kind of admire that. If somebody is practical, that means they like to get things done. They like usefulness. What about B, when he says the same thing about heaven? He says, well, I wouldn't see no advantage in going where Ms. Watson was, so I made up my mind I wouldn't try for it. He's talking about heaven. What does that say about Huck? Or the fact that he doesn't want to go to heaven because Ms. Watson is going to heaven, so he didn't want to go there.
He doesn't really think through stuff, I guess.
Well, we just said that he's practical. He thought about Moses, and he came to a conclusion, a logical conclusion. If dead people cannot teach me anything, and this person is dead, then I'm going to ignore it. So he actually does think, but what's wrong with his thinking?
Maybe he's very like
think that's definitely a factor in him, but he would say, he would change his mind if you gave him a practical reason to do it. This just tells me he's ignorant. Am I saying he's not smart? If I would call somebody ignorant, is that the same thing as saying they're not smart? It really isn't. Huck is ignorant, but he's smart. He just hasn't been taught. And so he doesn't know anything about heaven. He doesn't know anything about the Bible. And given his practical, he can't see how it applies to him. So that's the interesting thing about Huck. He's got a mix of, we admire him, but we feel sorry for him too, because he's kind of foolish. So that's 1A and B. You think you got that? Number 2 we'll skip for right now. Number 3 we'll skip. Number 4 we gotta skip. Number 5 we gotta skip. Number 6 we can answer. So you'll see more of this. What is superstition? How would you define superstition?
Believing in like bad luck and luck
Bad luck and what?
and good luck.
That's certainly a part of superstition. So what are you saying in a broader sense if you say somebody believes in luck? I'm going to get a definition here. Superstition. Let me read your definition. Belief or practices resulting from ignorance, fear of the unknown, or trust in magic or chance. So when you say luck, you're talking about chance. So superstition, you're right. Superstition is a belief in luck or chance or magic. It's unreasoning fear of nature. Okay, we don't need that. So I like what you said, because that's okay. It's the belief in chance, in magic, and luck. So what are some examples of that so far? We have one really good example. You remember it? Well, I want you to pay attention to those as you read it. It's number 6. Remember he killed a spider and he tried to figure out ways to undo the bad luck? That would be an example. And there's more coming up that you can kind of leave it open. He did things like he got up, turned around in my tracks 3 times, crossed my breast every time, then tied a little lock of my hair with a thread. This was because he killed a spider. So those things are based on ignorance in some respect. But why does he believe in superstition? Why would anybody believe in a superstition? Here. And are you superstitious? Have you ever been superstitious? How about you? You ever been superstitious?
I guess sometimes.
What would be an example of superstition?
Like in the books?
Well, we're talking about, if you can think of one, we've only seen really one example, the spider thing. There are more coming up, but what would be an example of a person you knew that was superstitious? What kind of things do they do?
I know some people, like, before, like, games or something, like, good luck, they're, like, I don't know, like, what they do, but they do, like, a specific set of things, like, they drink something, and then they, like put on, like, a lucky t-shirt, and
Right.
stuff like that.
Yeah, people involved in sports do a lot of that. They wear their lucky shirt, they sit in the same place. What about people that play the lottery? Or that gamble? Is there any skill involved in gambling? Well, what about, I don't play poker and I don't gamble, but isn't there some skill to that? Isn't there some skill to poker? Card games? Is there some skill to, like, going to I don't even know what blackjack is, but I've seen this roulette wheel, it goes around and around and you call a number. I don't guess there's any skill in that, but Seems like some games are skill, but aren't those kind of an example of superstition? Like people that play the lottery, what are they betting on that's gonna happen? Like if you look at it reasonably, you'd say I have a 1 in 200 million chance to win the lottery, the big numbers. So why do they play a game that the odds of them winning are nil to none? Why do they play? They play because they think they might win, but on what basis do they believe they might win?
They're lucky.
Luck. And that goes back to superstition. That was your definition of superstition, and it's a good one. So in that, I know thousands, I don't even know anybody, I've know people that buy the ticket, but I don't personally know anybody that does that regularly. But don't you think that person's a little bit superstitious if they're involved in the lottery? So before we get upset with Huck and criticize him, you just mentioned the athletes. Can I just say one more? I don't want to press this too much, but it's a big issue in this book. What is the practical side of wearing the lucky shirt, or sitting at the right place, at the game, or bouncing, when you dribble before the foul shot, every time you do it the same way, 6 times, 3 times? Is there anything actually practical about that?
I guess it gives you more confidence.
Well, that's a good point. That if it makes you feel confident, it's probably, that's actually probably a good thing. I don't remember about the sports that y'all do. Y'all do any? I mean, even if it's not varsity sports at school, do you involve? What sports do y'all do? Do you have any? Do you have any of them?
Ice skate.
Oh, do you ever do it competitively? Really? Are you doing it now?
Yeah.
How long have you done it?
2.5 years.
How come I've never heard about this? I mean, I think that's a pretty neat thing. Do your friends know you ice skate? Yeah.
I don't really talk about it.
Well, I don't know your reason, but that's something to be proud of. That's a real skill. Did you say you had?
I play soccer.
Well, my point is, if like in basketball, if you dribble the ball 3 times every time you hit a foul shot, how can that help you actually be successful if you do it the same way every time? Isn't sports a lot about rhythm and routine? And if you do it the same way, it not only gives you confidence, but it gives you focus. Like 3 times, 4 times, okay, I'm getting my mind, I'm used to doing it 3 times, it keeps you focused. So I'm just saying it's superstition. People who are superstitious, they wouldn't do it if it didn't work. You know what I mean? And Huck particularly, remember, he doesn't do anything that doesn't work. So if he believes in superstition, at least at some level, it seems to work. Just keep that in mind. It's really a practical thing to do. And if it didn't work, he would reject it. It raises some funny issues. That's number 6. Look at number 7. Again, you should answer these because I'd usually give you credit for doing it. So we will eventually answer. I'll need to check these. Number 7, Huck describes Miss Watson as tolerable, slim, old maid with goggles on. Do you find anything? Do you read anybody that's funny? Have you ever read a funny book in your entire life? A book that made you laugh? All right. Well, good, because most people think you got to see a movie or listen to a stand-up comedian. I think that's funny. Why are goggles funnier than glasses? I don't know what he had in mind, but when you think of goggles, don't you think of something really big, like swimming goggles, something like that? Is that very attractive? Would people wear those like to a normal? No, they wouldn't, because they're ugly. That's not why you wear them as a swimmer. You wear them for for a purpose, but it's simply funnier because the image that you get is exaggerated. So that's an example. Okay, and we'll end with number 8. A, when Huck wants to smoke, the widow forbids him, saying that it is a mean and unclean business. Huck says, and she took snuff too, of course. That was all right because she'd done it herself. What is ironic about that? She said, we talked about it yesterday, don't smoke, and yet she takes snuff, whatever that is. I'm never quite sure what that is. You know, people who chew tobacco, they stick it, they actually put it in their jaw somewhere. And some people put it, it sounds awful, between the teeth and the gum. They just put some lump of, I guess it secretes nicotine. So it's kind of like what do you call it? A diabetic pump. I have a son who's diabetic, so I can talk about diabetic. But you know how a diabetic pump drips insulin in you all day? He doesn't have one, but that's the idea. Maybe that's what snuff does. It just sort of drips nicotine in your system all day. Of course, it can give you mouth cancer. But what's ironic about it? That she forbade you to use it, but I use it. We said that's an example of what? What? It is hypocrisy, and it's having two sets of rules. One for you, but a different one for me. Because the connection is nicotine, tobacco. You can use it, but I can use it, but you can't. Just a question. Do people your age smoke? You don't have to name names. I'm talking about cigarettes. You don't know? I don't. Do any of you ladies know anybody that smokes like your age or a young person? I mean, maybe marijuana's involved now. It seems like that's a big deal, which is still illegal, isn't it? Isn't what do you call it? Recreational use of marijuana? But and of course, what do you call it? The vaping, that's not illegal, is it? And it does have nicotine in it, doesn't it? So why do people do it? Is it less nicotine? Like, what's the thrill of vaping as opposed to smoking a cigarette? I don't know. Do you have any idea?
I think it's because they're like advertised as being less harmful, but I think that's for like people who are already smokers.
So it would be, okay, that's a good
So
point.
then like I guess people think that it's not as bad, but in reality it's just not as bad for people who are like can't smoke.
That is a really,
Flavor.
what?
They're like, I think kids and like teenagers probably, because I feel like the advertising, usually they have very like bright colors and like, they always have like flavors that like kids would like. The cigarettes is more just like,
When you say flavor, though, do you taste it? You don't swallow anything. So where do you get the flavor?
they just say that they have like different flavors of like names.
It's like part of like the vapor.
Yeah, it's
Like
like the
what?
vapor has
It's
like
part of the vapor has like a flavor to
so
it.
it's probably more like enticing to them.
Okay, maybe like incense or something. Like you smell it, but you don't taste it. I know smell and taste are close to each other.
No, you can like taste it.
You can actually taste it.
It's like if you spray like, it's like if you like spray like Febreze and you actually like walk into it, like you can taste it on your tongue. You don't swallow
Okay,
it.
I see what you're saying.
If you accidentally spray Febreze and you walk into
Sierra,
it,
so
like
how
you
do you
can
know
taste
this?
it.
Sierra, how do you know this?
No, it's good. There's like,
I vape every day.
I go to, make sure he knows you're joking.
Well, you said it's not illegal, though,
There's,
right?
I know like a lot, because it's really popular now.
Vaping.
Yeah,
Yeah.
even though it's like really bad for you.
I mean, I haven't caught anybody, not that I'm looking, but I know that people have been caught vaping, which seems really kind of scary because you can't wait till after school or in a car. You got to do it now in school. That sounds a little bit addictive. I hate stories like this, but I know there's some TV shows talk about in fact, the name of the show I think is My Strange Addiction. Have you ever seen it? And all you have to do is read the subtitle and it says this person likes to eat dirt. or they eat the hair off their dog or something. You think, you've got to be kidding. There's something mentally wrong. It seems to me vaping may be along those lines, because it's not actually smoking, but it's like, you can be addicted to anything. I just remember as a kid, you get these habits, I don't know what, they're just dumb things that you just do because you're nervous, and I guess they make you, even something like this. That's kind of there's nothing wrong with that, but that would be a thing. When you're in middle school, you know, your legs bouncing all day, and it drives people around you crazy, but it's just a habit. It's harmless, but I guess we understand addictions. We all tend to go to things that are addictive, and anyway.
I've seen that girl on TikTok that's like addicted to eating cornstarch.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, yeah, it's like a trend.
They just like take a bite of it, right?
Yeah, there's like people that are getting addicted to like eating cornstarch.
Well, it's something you used to bake with, right? Or
Yeah.
Yeah, you can use it to, it's like a lot of different things.
what else would you use it for?
I have no idea. Eat it.
Besides that? Well, yeah, it's just funny about us humans. We get addicted to things like that. Just crave eating paper.
I used to eat paper.
The one on the bridge? Or like what?
Oh, no, there was that Vine where like, I'm addicted to flipping
Oh, yeah.
There's one girl that's
I'm
addicted
addicted
to
to
drinking gasoline.
Sorry, what?
Yeah.
She's
Or if I
not-
talk about the licking the dog, there's a girl that actually like licks her cats and then like eats it. Like the fur.
Oh my god.
Is that even safe?
Wouldn't you agree that at a certain point as a kid doing sort of harmless things like this or whatever, when you say that, you outgrow it, but if an adult does it, even if it's certainly not really harming other people, except you have a life, and how helpful can you be to other people if you're so into yourself that you have to do this thing to stay alive? That's pretty pathetic, although we can understand it, because we've all been there at some point, but adults doing it, that's when it gets really bizarre. For kids, they hopefully they outgrow it. Anyway, all this comes from that hypocrisy. I'm just curious about the smoking. I never see that anymore. I rarely see people smoking. And it seems odd when you see people in a car or standing outside a convenience store smoking.
Like the way like aesthetic girlies on TikTok, they bring in that smoking.
No, literally. It's like now like a cute like aesthetic
Yeah.
to like smoke.
It's a what?
People think like now if anyone smokes, it's like cigarettes, it's supposed to be like
Like aesthetically pleasing.
yeah, it's supposed to be like
vintage.
pretty and like
Oh,
like
well-
attractive.
Baking's like really not any, not even.
Not vaping. Like
No,
real
I know,
cigarettes.
but like anything that you put
Vape.
inhale.
Like aesthetically.
Well, that's how they advertised it back in the 50s and 60s, and in magazines and in movies. The real suave guy would be smoking a cigarette. It's the same thing about drinking, because in the old movies, you get a glass like this. In westerns, they always poured that much liquor or whiskey, whatever it was, and having the glass, I guess having the cigarette, and being, you don't even know who Cary Grant is. Have you ever heard of Cary Grant? All right, he's one of those matinee idols of the 40s, 50s. Seeing him, and you're a young person, man, he is really cool. He's got all the girls, and he has the glass, James Bond, and he has the cigarette. Yeah, but I didn't know that about smoking. I didn't know it was kind of making a comeback. Is that what you're saying? Interesting. Okay, any other ideas here? Because I'm asking you to read it tonight. I do want to do one thing before we go, and I want to give you this and do something with it. Tomorrow, maybe, by the way, who do you have for your B period? Like you're 3 different places, right? All right, well, what I'm saying is tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, it's my B period and it's the AP class. I hope to go to the grammar concert. And so if you have a teacher that has a child down there or grandchild, there won't be too many of those. I'm about the only one, Mr. Feeney and I. But they may not want to go. I can't imagine. I think most parents would want to go down there. So you may have a sub tomorrow for that 1 hour. I know, I hope I do, because I'd like to go down there and check them out. Well, they probably could use it. I know one thing that's gonna happen, Ms. Welch is,
What was his name?
Jesse?
Mr. Cobb.
Yes.
Well, he is helping us. I mean, not just me, but he's helped Dr. Betzel. his- Yeah, he has a child in it. He's married and has a child in Grandma.
7 children.
All right, we're gonna, while we do Huck Finn, what are you? You guys are C. All right, so we have 15 minutes. We'll do this first poem. If there's any time left over, you can. We're gonna, while we read Huck Finn, we're gonna, we won't take up class period much. I'll give you some time to read. Mostly, we'll just go over questions, talk about it, but that's not gonna take up a lot of class time. So I think we can accomplish more if we do a couple of poets that happen at the same time, that are writing at the same time this book takes place. So these are Civil War era poets. It's a Civil War era book. It's pre-Civil War. These two were popular after the Civil War. And the first one is Emily Dickinson. You ever heard of her? You know anything about her? She had a whole family, and I guess she had a sister. I know she had a brother. I mean, she was a part of a big family. She never got married. She was, some people thought she was a little bit loony. The reason for that is she was a recluse. She what?
Wait, what was she?
What?
What was she?
I said loony.
She was a recluse.
Recluse.
Oh, I thought you meant like the spider. Like the.
Well, it is the same word. You know what a recluse is? That's somebody who, a hermit, not a hermit. What would you, somebody just doesn't want to see people? What would you call somebody that doesn't want to be around people? That's what a recluse is. So she had a nice family, not married family, but her biological family, and she lived there, but she didn't like to be around people. She was legendary for that. Yet she's also one of America's greatest poets. So let's do this first one quickly. There are some questions for every poem in here that we're going to do. There are more poems than there are questions. I think we'll probably stick to the poems that have the questions. I don't know why I didn't have more questions. But the first one, by the way, all her poems are titled by the first line of her poem. That tells me that she didn't title the poem, because most poets give their poem a title. I don't think she did. And so when they were published under the name probably of the first line. So There Is No Frigate Like a Book is generally considered the title of this poem. It has no other title. Let me read it to you and just briefly talk about it. There is no frigate like a book to take us lands away, nor any coursers like a page of prancing poetry. This traverse may the poorest take without a press of toll. How frugal is the chariot that bears a human soul. If you will, look to you can answer these on the back, but a lot of these you can work together and do it. But let's just do this together since you have a little time. Let's define some terms, all right? That's the first question. Like, you really need to. So do you know what a frigate is? A frigate is a naval vessel, usually naval vessel. We have frigates in the Coast Guard, I believe, so they still exist. But it is usually a fighting ship, like a warship of some kind. Do you know what a courser is? Nor any coursers like a page of prancing poetry. You know what a courser is? A courser is a warhorse, fast steed, warhorse. Do you know what a chariot is? Of course you know what a chariot is. What is a chariot? Well, when you say carriage, I think of Sunday afternoon, traveling in a carriage down to see grandmom in the old days.
It was like the Romans' way of like sports and stuff.
and war again. So one thing the three have in common, I think, would be war. A frigate is usually, not always, but usually a warship. Courser is a war horse, and a chariot's a war wagon. I don't know whatever way it's driven by or pulled by horses. So what is? It's a very short poem, and it's got it's based on several images, but several metaphors. Like something is like something else. Or it's actually similes. The word like is used, so we call it a simile. So what is she comparing books to? Like in the first line, or what's she comparing a book to? It says, there is no frigate like a book to take us lands away. So what's she comparing the book to? I mean, contrasting the book to. Because it's not like this. It says there is no frigate like a book. Frigate book. So it's saying it's being compared to a frigate. What does a frigate, a courser, and a chariot have in common besides war? They travel. How is a book like that? What does a book and those things have in common? How do you travel in a book?
What you imagine, like, it lets your imagination, like, put you where that character is.
All right, so you can literally travel to other countries, not literally, but in your mind, travel to other countries. What else, how else can you travel besides just space? Look at the poem. How else can you travel other than just, it's not so much in the poem, but how can a book allow you to travel somewhere else other than spatial distance? Like I can go to England, read a book about England. I can go to China, I can read a book about China. But what else does it allow you to do? Well, what about those words? Chariot, when were chariots used? Like what era?
Oh, like taking back to like the past.
Yes, because chariots are old, ancient. Coursers, that's kind of a medieval term for horse. And frigate, there are frigates now, but I think of the 1800s, 19th century, which is when the poem was written. So poetry can take you into places like vehicles, like these vehicles, but it can do something. So in what way is it superior to a chariot or a horse or a ship? What can those ships not do?
Take you back in time.
They can't go back in time. What else makes a book superior to those forms of travel? Look at the poem. There's something else in it that makes the book superior to physical travel.
It's free. Or like, it's cheaper to buy a
It
book.
is. Where does it say that?
It's traverse made of forest, take without price and toll.
It doesn't matter how rich you are, you gotta have enough book, you haven't got enough money to buy the book or to check it out, whatever that costs. I mean, it doesn't usually cost anything. So it's cheap. It's cheaper than those things. And why is it more important? What does a book do that those forms of travel cannot do? Besides take you in the past, it's cheaper, but there's something else that those forms of travel cannot do at all that a book can do. Isabel, did you see anything toward the end of the poem? Maybe the last two lines? It says, how frugal is the chariot, frugal means inexpensive, that bears a human soul. What does that mean? What do you think that means? How can a book bear a human soul? Bear means carry.
Like, maybe you can, like, improve yourself from it?
Yes. It can change your life. Spiritual books can deal with the soul. Can those other forms of travel do anything with you spiritually? The answer, of course, is no. So if you had to summarize this, there are what, 3 or 4 ways that books are superior to these other forms of travel? What would they be again? Sarah, do you know, remember the 4, I think there are 4 things.
It helps you travel to like it helps you like travel in time, and then it helps you like imagine yourself in a different place.
Right, that's 2,
And then it's cheaper,
yes.
and then it helps like your education.
Yeah, and your soul, your spiritual growth and so forth. That's why a book is superior. And the questions, like we did number 1, and we answered it. So make sure you have these written down so I can give you some credit. Literary devices, we did see a simile. Did you see any other literary devices? That was primarily, I see 2 similes and a metaphor, at least. Like a book, like a page. Frugal is the chariot. That would be personification, wouldn't it? People are frugal, not chariots. And the chariot that bears the human soul, that's the book, so that's a metaphor. It's got similes, metaphors, and personification. What is the tone of the poem? Like, what is the attitude the speaker has in the poem? You know what that means? Like, you can say something, but it's the attitude that you say it in. Well, what's the attitude this is written in? Is this person positive about books? Surprised about books? Sad about books? Scared of books? Hopeful about books? Which of those words would describe the attitude of the speaker? Encouraging and hopeful and positive. So it's all the good things that poetry, that books can do. And it's achieved how is it achieved? One was by those comparisons. The comparison between a frigate and a book, a horse and a book, a chariot and a book. It's achieved by showing how superior the book is to these other things. And what is the theme or central idea of this poem? It has something to do with reading. Seems like that's the theme lately. How valuable it is. I mean, it allows you to do things that TV, videos, any of those things cannot do. So we're going to spend some time with her. Tomorrow I'll see you after the concert down there, which you won't be involved in, but I will meet with you and we'll talk about the book. Please read it. I'll probably start giving you some quizzes, but I'm not going to give you one tomorrow, so read it anyway. I will give you credit for the questions. And this is the end.